Well, hello there. Welcome to the Iris and Jose Project and Deep into the Shallows. Uh, Human observations, two humans observing human behavior. The shallows, where all our social interactions happen. And I am Iris, and with me is Jose. Yeah, Jose, deep in the shallows, we don't judge, we just observe and talk and find, hopefully, give people a nugget of information they can use to help enlighten them. You want to introduce our topic?
Yes. So today is communication. And before I throw it back to you, I want to talk about how some of my communication stems from the family background I have. And so my family, we tend to be really, really stubborn. And so it's kind of hard to communicate our points of views because we think we're right all the time. And so I remember one time that I was gonna transition to take over my brother's job at this convenience store. And he was showing me the ways and he was really direct. He was like, this is how you're supposed to do it. And you got to be quick. You have to manage your time well. And me, I'm just a little kid. I'm not, you know, that direct. I'm more just like laid back. I still am. So you should probably know that by now. And so when he was telling me all this, and I was like, hey man, just relax. Like it's gonna get done. Don't worry about it. Like I'll do it. And then he came back like maybe 20 minutes later and he saw me still doing the same thing, just moving at a slow pace. And he was like, bro, what the F are you doing? Like you gotta get this effing thing done. And I was just like, oh wow, like maybe I shouldn't work here because I'm not gonna manage my time well. And so the point of that is like maybe if we communicated better, things would have been done a certain way. And so, Iris, my initial question to you is what is communication? And at that age, at a young age, how can you communicate better?
That's such a great question. I'm gonna go ahead and leave my camera off for bandwidth. I've struggled in the past with that. But so your first part of your question, I'll go ahead and answer. And I hope it's okay. My picture's gonna be up there. You're not gonna see all my goofy reactions. Um, so what is communication? Think about it. Communication is being able to express a message, some kind of information, being able to connect with someone else. It doesn't necessarily mean you're having a verbal conversation because you can say a lot with body language, which 90% of communication is body language. Before, you found common languages and people started, finding common speak, there was a lot of hand motion conversations. There was sign languages and hand signs that were used. So just being able to convey something person to another. So it requires a sender and a receiver, a speaker, a listener, a writer and a reader. So there's more than one individual involved. That's one thing, communication. Although that self-talk and individual, talking to themselves, that's a whole nother topic, Jose. That body language, again, 90% of communication is body language. Then, of course, you have tone and the words that you say. And when it comes down to saying things, there's three different major ways to convey information, the way people communicate. The central starting point of good communication is one position of respect. I respect you, you respect me, and that is, someone who's grounded and good business like communication. We do it at work all the time. That is assertiveness. It means we stand in our truth, we respect ourselves and respect the other person. The sender says, I'm okay, also says, receiver, you are okay. That requires a speaker and a listener. Okay. And in the story that you told about your brother training you, the listener was a little bit passive, right? Passive listening. So we have then, of course, assertive, which is a good, respectful place to start with. But then when you look at passive, which is on like a weaker, either a weaker listener, a weaker speaker, and so someone who's passive does not believe that they deserve to be heard. They're not honoring themselves and they're giving all props to the other person. It's like, oh, I'm not okay, you're okay. And so in passive, that's when people get walked all over. they get, pushed around. You can tell by their body language a whole lot. They may be looking down, they may be twisting their hair, wringing their hands, have really facial expressions that are sad, demure, just not strong, and they convey that with their body language very strongly, and their words too. They may speak in a hushed tone, those sorts of things. And also we have on the other end the aggressive individual, that aggressive. So we've talked about assertiveness, which is, you're standing upright, you're smiling, you're approachable, your head is up, your hands are by your side or right in front of you. We have the passive that they're looking down, they're wringing their hands, they're kind of like body language is slouched. And then we have aggressive, which is loud, which is angry sort of look, furrowed brow, showing their teeth like a scowl, their hands at their hips. You see them walking towards the manager. I must see the manager right now. That sort of aggressive individual who says, I am to be respected, you are not. Where we want everyone to be is in the assertive. Every now and then we slip. That's where we get this sort of like people who are passive and then they start, talk back, and so it's that's where you get these sort of like wow, you're here early, I didn't know you woke up that early, or I didn't know they made that dress in that size, it looks good on you, or I'm surprised your hair it's done, those sorts of things that they're they're veiled. Oh, is that a compliment? No, it's a passive aggressive comment. So that's really what communication is conveying a message, and really it can be in any one of those forms. Although ideally, in order to maintain peace, we want it to be a good communication that is one based on respect. What would you add to that, Jose? What do you think?
No, I completely agree. And I loved how you broke it down into those three different like patterns that we have in our society. And so, yeah, majority of the time we do try to aim for assertiveness and having a respectful back and forth with whoever you're communicating with, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. But sometimes you do have that one person that's just like, uh, I want everyone to be happy. I want everyone to be, pleased with what's going on in our program or what's going on in our system and whatever. So it's essentially like people pleasers get kind of put in that passive
Yeah,
role
people
and
pleasing or peacekeepers.
peacekeepers for sure because they just want everyone happy. And so they lose that confidence that they have because they're like, I'm just going to be a yes man or a yes woman and let whatever happen happen and I'm just going to accept my role. And then there's those aggressive people that are just like, it's going to be my way or the highway, or it's just going to be like my way is correct. And I guess that's majority of my family at that point when it's like when they have that stubborn trait going on. And yeah, I mean, it's okay to try to defend yourself, but you have to have that boundary and that respect towards one another to reach that true assertiveness instead of being aggressive when you are trying to communicate how you feel or what's like a logical, you know, thought, I guess you would say. And so, yeah, and that kind of goes with one of my things. When you talk about passive aggressiveness, I remember when I was trying to do my student teaching, and this one lady was like, Jose, I don't think you're cut out for it. Like, well, okay, she wasn't passive aggressive there, but she was just direct. But she was like, I don't think you're cut out for this. Like, you're too laid back, you're too passive, like you're not showing enough initiative. But one time, and this is where the passive aggressiveness comes in, we had a whole like kind of seminar type thing going on. And so she was like, some of y'all should not be wearing y'all's Nike socks with y'all's dress shoes. Like you have to dress professional. Like you have to have nice long socks instead of Nike socks. And essentially there was a few guys, maybe two or three more besides me, but I knew she was talking about me because I don't want to say she was a hater, but I think she was. But to be
Well,
called out like that was
yeah,
crazy.
it felt like a personal attack.
It was, yeah.
right? Because she had already approached you. You already had that mental tag. You were already sort of on the defensive, really, for yourself, because here you are. This is your field of study. You have every expectation that you're going to be out there doing the job that you have been training for and paying good money to get trained for. Like you're studying for pedagogy, and by golly, by gum, you're going to go teach. And yet here comes, and I'm assuming this was a
Coordinator.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So yes, the field experience coordinator, and and for her to very boldly explain to you, I don't think you're cut out for teaching. Basically, is what she's saying, right? Her message, number one. Let's look at that. So sender. She's a person of influence. She's a who said of the highest magnitude in real life. She is someone when you have a teacher, a guide, a mentor, a coach, someone like that, that's like the Wizard of Oz, right? They're going to bestow upon you whatever it is that you need. And instead of doing that, she came in and told you that all this time that you spent training was for naught because you're not cut out for this. Instead, maybe her message needed help. Instead, she'd say, "We need to build capacity." Because when it comes to coaching, you look at the skill and the will. You had all the desire and will to do that. And that's half the job. In fact, that's probably way more than half. If you're motivated, then right there, it's just a matter of building capacity. And so instead of knocking you down by saying you're not cut out for this, bro, she should instead have come back and said, "What is your goal when you get out?" Ask you a question, "What is your goal?" And then let you say it. And then, how do you see yourself in the classroom? How do you see the students? How do you think that's going to be received? What do you
Mhm.
think you need to do? And then always having you, because you are an intelligent individual, a thinker, obviously, and a scholar. And so let you find solutions for you instead of just pulling out the rug from under you and saying, "Hey, you're probably not going to be great at this," which we all know already how the story ends. Jose is an amazing teacher. I see what you mean. That
Mhm.
communication. I don't know how you classify that. It just was that's in that situation. I believe the issue was that the individual, as a coordinator of extern, the outside experience for
Mhm.
student teachers, she needed to be more skilled in coaching. She honestly needed to build up her skills in her job for her to be coming back and telling you that, because teaching requires coaching. It's going to. So you can get teachers in there, and well, anyway, Jose, you add to that. What do you think? Does that surmise it?
No, it summarizes it pretty good, if that's what you said. But I think it was a little bit of bad communication on her part. I mean, like you're saying, she could have done it in a more positive, more like a feedback type of way instead of a criticism on like my personal my personality.
Well, that's how it felt for you. Was a critique.
Yeah. And I mean, it happens. It's okay. I know sometimes you see someone and they rub you the wrong way. And maybe it's because you don't know them or whatnot, but that's another thing. What about you? Has anything like that happened to you, or have you have any good examples of good communication?
Well, no, I mean, when it comes to teaching, um, yes, uh, the better way, because when I went through that as well, we had our, outside experience. We all would come in and meet on Fridays, or there was a certain day when we would all meet, and people would talk about like, "Hey, I did a split. I did fourth grade and I did junior high." They would model the classroom management skills in those meetings. So everything that was done, I went to Our Lady of the Lake for my pedagogy, which was incredible. They're just amazing there. I learned everything I needed to know to teach. I did, and except of course, the experience which you get firsthand to realize like, oh my gosh, I need to go back to adult ed. That's when I had my epiphany doing my student teaching. I need to go back to adult ed and help parents appreciate their children. I saw a lot of things that just made me sad. But going back to the student teacher sessions, they would catch people being good, you know, and say, "I went and watched you teach, and in your observations, you did this, 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 and this. Excellent." Pointing out the good examples, right? They never once dogged on anybody or never called anybody out publicly. Like if somebody was wearing the wrong shoes, they would have probably, or socks, they probably would have pulled them aside and said, "That's not going to fly in an interview." Okay. I mean, like, don't do that publicly like that, and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So, I mean, that's the experience I had. Was they like if you're going to preach something and you're teaching pedagogy, but then by golly, please model that behavior that you want to see in your teachers. Because then that behavior that she modeled, what if you were to go over there and tell the students, "I'm so sorry, you're just not cut out for math." I mean, that's not going to apply too well. You're not cut out for speaking English, yo.
Mhm.
That is no way to approach anyone. You're right. It was not good communication. It was not a good coaching. It's not a good way for a teacher to be communicating. But when it comes to family, though, let's back up the truck, right? So two different sides. My family was very talky, loud, very expletive deleted here and there, right? My father would tell jokes. He was so freaking funny, and was always laughter, loud, gregarious sort of group. And then my husband's family is very quiet. They're very, and not that they weren't laughing, but they do. They're very social. It's just there was a different demeanor because there was a lot of respect for their parents' home, and so it just was not the sort of you don't throw expletives out at their home. It was just it was very different. So let's just say I didn't do a lot of talking in those settings, which I mean, my husband knows, and I'd say like I don't feel like I can talk here because it's different. But and, we've gotten past that. But that's a sort of example and dynamic that I see is everybody's got their own. They grow up with their own, ways. Their families are, and there's no right or wrong. There are better ways of learning communication, better things to do and say, and so it does impact your transferable skill to work, right? The better you are at communicating. My husband's excellent at communicating, by the way. So his parents modeled something very, very good in that way. That if he had, and he always said that, hey, look, if you've got something to say to somebody, go and tell them. Don't be going around telling other people like, what do you think about this? No, go straight to that person and just tell them. Because I'm sure that's what his parents taught him, you know. And so that's always a good practice, right?
That communication habit sounds like great emotional intelligence. Like, hey, that's not my issue, that's your issue. So it's like if you want to talk about it, you better approach them,
I'm glad
which
you
is
brought up
very good.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up emotional intelligence because that does have a lot to do with good communication. And what is emotional intelligence? It is a self-awareness. It is being able to put a mirror on yourself and your own behaviors, your own emotions, how you feel to know and interact better with others. So you can be more sensitive when you're communicating, knowing that words have power and that high EQ is critical. Again, it is a self-awareness, self-control, and self-monitoring in all communications and human interactions. EQ is coming into play big time with communication. I'm so happy you brought that up. Just absolutely. So what do you know about EQ?
I know that sometimes I don't have it because, like, honestly, it took me a while to become a better communicator because I felt like I was a really bad, just like listener. Sometimes I would just hear something and I would instantly want to, talk back or instantly just respond to that just one comment because I'm just angry or, you know, filled with negative talk, either for myself or for the person that's talking to me. And so with that lack of listening skills, there would be like an immediate put down for whatever the person was saying or doing because my feelings were hurt or like logic was thrown out the window. So I honestly might not have that much to talk about when it comes to high EQ because I'm still learning and I'm still trying to gain that awareness of like, okay, Jose, you're being negative. Like, why are you being negative? So
Interesting.
that's where
So that's still you
yeah.
feel like that's still an area of growth for you. And I get it because I really had no idea what it was when I first started working and was triggered very easily, did not realize what an amygdala hijack was, did not realize, why am I feeling so weepy right now? Those sorts of things where, it's been a long, hard road. Coleman only came out with his EQ in 1995, I think it was 1995. So, by then I was already 30. So, yeah, all my stuff was it felt hardwired, but I've grown a lot in that way. And so this awareness, now we shift into an awareness of your emotional intelligence is going to impact your communication. We've covered a lot, but I think it's going to be important for us as we move forward to talk about some of these things. And I think we should stay on communication. Um, so a big takeaway for everyone should be that in order for us to be better communicators, we need to be aware of the fact that are we a good listener? And I think listening deserves its own discussion because there's a huge part of listening that we just don't teach in schools, and listening is tremendous. There's four different listening styles. Jose, that's why you think that you're doing it wrong, but there's no right way. There's just combinations of those four, and we'll get to those at a future conversation. Why do we get into these bad communications? Why do we shift from grow up passive and then all of a sudden it builds and builds and we become aggressive, or there's someone who has never been listened to and they become aggressive as a mechanism, a coping mechanism? How can we help those individuals become better communicators and more assertive, respecting themselves while simultaneously respecting the other person, because those are very important for people to get, jobs. I mean, just for communicating in general in society, at work, at home, at school, in the community, really, really important. So why it happens and why it's important. Anything you want to add to that?
No, just besides communication is key. Like the more you are actually involved and aware and present of what's going on, just if you feel like you need to communicate your piece, then you should, and but you also have to respect the fact that someone might want to convey their message, and you have to respect that as well.
Exactly. And it doesn't happen on its own. It is a skill to be learned. So if we could impart any kind of advice to anyone right now would be practice. Look at yourself in the mirror, literally, not just for your EQ, but for your body language, your tone. But that is a choice that people must make if they're listening. Do I want to be a better communicator? Then I need to become a better listener, a better at communicating my words, my body language, how I stand, how do I look? I was never aware of my RBF. Now I'm getting better at it, right? So now I'm getting much better at that. So anyway, well, Jose, we've come to the end of another episode of Deep into the Shallows. We'll be staying on communication for a bit. I want to thank everyone. And is there any closing words that you'd like to say?
Like, share, comment, subscribe to our channel, and hopefully continue to listen. And make sure to comment and let us know that we want to see Irene's face.
Well, also comment if you think that what we're saying is bunk. I mean, if you know otherwise and you think, hey, being aggressive is where it's at, try and convince us otherwise. Or we must all be passive. Well, all right. Well, why? Tell us in the comments why you believe that. Anyway, shallows where all our observed human interactions happen. Let's bring these things to the light so that we can all live together in harmony. We'll talk to you guys later. Let me put my camera on for one brief moment. Hopefully my internet won't. All right, here we go. All right.
Bye.
Bye.